My name's Owen. I'm 28, and I teach high school history in a suburb outside Austin, the kind of place where strip malls outnumber trees and everyone's lease ends in August. I rent a one-bedroom in a complex called Desert Willows, which has neither desert nor willows, just beige siding and a pool that's always slightly too cold. My days are predictable. Up at 6, coffee with too much cream, lecturing teenagers about the Treaty of Versailles until their eyes glaze over. Home by 4, grade papers, heat up something frozen, fall asleep to documentaries about World War II. My ex-girlfriend used to say I was comfortable with monotony. She left 2 years ago for a guy who rock climbs. I didn't argue. The apartment next door stayed empty for 3 months after the previous tenant moved out. Then, one Tuesday in March, a U-Haul appeared. I was grading essays on the Reformation when I heard the first thud against the shared wall. Then another, then a string of creative profanity that would have made my students proud. I looked through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, maybe mid-20s, wrestling a bookshelf that clearly didn't fit through the doorframe. She wore paint-stained overalls, hair pulled into a messy knot, and the kind of focused scowl people get when furniture betrays them. No movers, no help. Just her and a U-Haul's worth of bad decisions. I opened the door. "You need a hand?" She looked up, surprised. "You know how to pivot?" "I've seen enough episodes of Friends." She laughed, sharp and sudden. "Then you're hired." Her name was Margot. She worked remotely, something involving graphic design and clients who changed their minds at 11 p.m. She'd moved from Denver because rent was cheaper, and she'd broken up with someone who collected NFTs unironically. We spent the next 2 hours disassembling her bookshelf, carrying boxes labeled kitchen, maybe, and emotional baggage, literally, and arguing about whether Ross and Rachel were actually on a break. By the time the U-Haul was empty, it was dark. She offered me a beer from a cooler packed between winter coats. We sat on her empty living room floor, backs against the wall, condensation dripping onto the carpet. "Thanks," she said, not looking at me. "I would have given up around box 7. You'd have figured it out." She turned, studied me for a second. "You always this helpful, or do I just look pathetic?" "Little of both," she smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. "Good. I hate liars." The next 3 months, we became the kind of neighbors who borrow sugar but mean it. She'd knock at 7 a.m. holding 2 coffees from the place on the corner, the good stuff that cost more than my lunch. I'd knock at 9 p.m. with leftover stir-fry when I'd accidentally made enough for 3. We'd sit on her balcony or mine, talking about nothing important. Her nightmare clients. My students who thought Mussolini invented fascism last year. The way the complex manager never fixed anything, unless you threatened to call the city. She was easy to be around. No performance, no small talk that felt like work. She'd show me design mock-ups, ask which font felt less corporate dystopia. I'd read her sections of particularly bad student essays, the ones that claimed Napoleon was basically a vibe. She'd laugh until she snorted, then get embarrassed, then laugh harder. One May evening, storm rolling in, she knocked on my door holding a bottle of wine and a deck of cards. "I'm procrastinating a deadline. Enable me?" We played gin rummy on my coffee table, rain hammering the windows. She won 4 games straight, and I accused her of counting cards. She said history teachers should know better than to accuse without evidence. I said graphic designers should know better than to gloat. Somewhere around midnight, the conversation shifted. She told me about Denver, about the boyfriend who'd spent more time on Discord than talking to her, about moving here with no plan, just the feeling that staying would have been slower than leaving. I told her about my ex, about the rock climber, about how I'd known we were done 6 months before she said it, how I'd just kept grading papers and pretending comfortable was the same as happy. Margot set down her cards. "You ever think about starting over?" "I'm a high school teacher in suburban Texas. This is the start over." "No," she said. "I mean really starting over. Different city, different job, different life." I looked at her, rain streaking the window behind her head. "You planning something?" She hesitated, then nodded. "My lease is up in August. I got offered a contract in Portland. Bigger clients, actual career trajectory. But it's expensive, and I'd need a roommate to make rent work." She picked at the label on the wine bottle. I know we've only known each other a few months, but you're the only person here who feels real. You're asking me to move across the country. I'm asking if you'd consider it. No pressure. Just think about it. I didn't answer. Just poured more wine, reshuffled the deck, dealt another hand. But my mind was already calculating. Lease terms, savings, whether I could get a teaching job in Oregon, whether I wanted to. She won the next 3 games, I let her. I thought about it for 2 weeks. Didn't tell anyone, not even my coworker Marcus, who I usually told everything. Just turned it over in my head like a Rubik's Cube I couldn't solve. Portland meant leaving the only place I'd ever taught, the only apartment I'd lived in alone, the predictable loop of my life. It also meant possibility. Margot. Rain that wasn't just thunderstorms, mountains you could actually see. The problem was, I didn't know what I was saying yes to. A roommate situation? A friend helping a friend? Or something else, something neither of us had named yet? One Saturday in June, I knocked on her door. She answered in an oversized t-shirt and running shorts, hair wet from the shower, laptop open on the couch behind her. I need to ask you something, I said. She stepped aside, let me in. Sounds serious. I sat on the arm of her couch. If I say yes to Portland, what am I saying yes to? She closed the laptop, sat across from me. Honestly, I don't know. Her voice was quieter than usual. I know I want you there. I know it's not just about rent, but I don't know how to say the other part without making it weird. Try me. She looked at me, really looked, the kind of eye contact that makes your chest tight. I think about you more than I should. I listen for your door in the morning. I make extra coffee before you knock. I've rewritten this conversation in my head 50 times, and it always ends with me sounding insane. I didn't say anything, just sat there, heart doing something complicated. She stood, walked to the window, arms crossed. Forget it. Bad idea. You've got tenure track here, and I'm just some neighbor who... I don't have tenure. I'm year-to-year contract, same as everyone under 30. She turned. What? I don't have anything keeping me here except inertia. I stood, walked over, stopped a foot away. But I need to know if this is real, not the roommate part, the part where you listen for my door. Her breath caught. It's real. Then ask me properly. She swallowed, looked down, then back up. Will you move to Portland with me? Not as a roommate, as whatever we're too scared to call it yet. I stepped closer. That's better, but still not quite there. Owen. Her voice shook slightly. Will you take a chance on me? On us? Even though it's terrifying and might blow up and could ruin a perfectly good friendship? I smiled. See? That's the one. Is that a yes? That's a yes. She kissed me then, quick and soft and tasting like mint toothpaste. When she pulled back, she was grinning. You're sure? Because I can't promise it'll be easy. I'm messy, I work weird hours, I have opinions about typography that border on unhinged. I kissed her again, longer this time. I teach teenagers about trench warfare. I can handle kerning debates. We gave notice in July. I told Marcus over lunch, and he just shook his head, said, about time you did something interesting. I applied to 3 schools in Portland, got interviews at 2, an offer from 1 by the end of the month. Margot spent every evening packing, labeling boxes with increasingly unhinged categories. Clothes, winter, cables, chaos, things that spark joy, shen. The last week in Texas felt like the end of a movie I'd been watching half asleep. I said goodbye to students who'd already forgotten my name. Returned my keys to the complex manager, who didn't ask why I was leaving. Sat on my empty balcony one last time, looking at the parking lot I'd stared at for 4 years. Margot knocked around 9 p.m., 2 beers in hand, sat beside me on the concrete. You having second thoughts? She asked. Third and fourth thoughts. I took a beer. But still going. Good. Because I already changed my address with the post office. We left on a Saturday in August. 1 U-Haul, 2 cars, a playlist Margot made that was somehow all 90s alt-rock and Japanese city pop. We drove in tandem, Texas bleeding into New Mexico into Colorado. Stopped at a motel outside Denver where the shower leaked and the bed sagged in the middle. Lay there talking until 2 a.m. about what we'd do first in Portland, Powell's books, the Japanese garden, find the best pho in the city and argue about broth. She fell asleep first, head on my shoulder, hand loose on my chest. I stayed awake longer, listening to the highway outside, feeling the weight of everything we were driving toward. We hit Portland on a Tuesday. The apartment was smaller than the photos suggested, hardwood floors that creaked, a kitchen window that looked onto a brick wall. But it had 2 bedrooms, high ceilings, and rent we could split without eating. Ramen every night. We spent the first week unpacking, arranging furniture, discovering the coffee shop 2 blocks over that opened at 6. I started at the new school after Labor Day. Juniors and seniors, Pacific Northwest kids who argued about zoning laws and knew more about local politics than I did. Margot's clients multiplied, deadlines stacking up, but she was smiling more, sleeping better. One October evening, rain soft against the windows, we sat on the couch we'd bought together, some Swedish modern thing from a store where everything had unpronounceable names. She had her laptop, I had a stack of essays. The TV played something neither of us watched. She looked over. "You happy?" I set down my pen. "Yeah, weirdly, completely happy." "Good." She closed the laptop, "because I was terrified you'd regret it." "I regret nothing, except maybe our router. This Wi-Fi is a crime." She laughed, leaned into me. Outside, Portland did what it does best. Rain, gray, quiet, perfect. Inside, we'd built something neither of us had planned. No grand gestures, no movie moments. Just 2 people who'd taken a chance on proximity turning into something more. She fell asleep there, head in the crook of my shoulder. I stayed awake a little longer, listening to the rain, feeling the weight of her breathing, thinking about the knock on my door 7 months ago, the bookshelf, the coffee, the question I'd said yes to. The apartment was small, the city was new, but we were here. And that was enough.